we'll give it over to you. So go ahead.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Welcome. I'm going to give you a sort of big picture view of admissions today, sort of so you know what to anticipate when you enter into this process, whenever that's going to be. And hopefully, you'll have a little bit of a better understanding and you'll be able to enter the process with knowledge and being on top of it and knowing how to best succeed. So just giving you a little bit of an idea of what the numbers look like here. Um, you can see the number of applications to medical school in the center, which is almost 50,000, and the number of acceptance is around 20,000. So you see where you are in terms of the competitive nature of the application process. You see the male-female ratio in terms of the application process, as well as the enrollees. And you get some idea of, on the right side, of what the average MCAT score was for enrollees, and that's across the country, right? And sort of giving you a complexion of the race and ethnicity of the medical students that are currently enrolled in the United States. But you see sort of the magnitude of this process. It's huge. AMCAS and what they have to deal with in terms of the number of applications, of document processing. So it is quite an extensive process that all of us engage in. And just, I thought interesting that the youngest enrollee to medical school, 17, the oldest at 55. So to get an idea a little bit about holistic review, I think it's important to sort of have an idea of what is relatively high in importance in terms of academics, in terms of experiences, right? And then, in terms of demographics. Specifically, we are a private institution at the Zucker School of Medicine. We take students from all over the country without preference to in-state applications. However, as you may be aware, state institutions will give advantage to state residents, and that's important to know when you are applying to school. I think, there is often a drive toward research. Private institutions may value that a little bit more than the state and public institutions. There are certain schools that cater or are looking for students who are more community-based, rural backgrounds, so to speak, and there are certain schools that are geared toward that. So it's important when you're applying to really get a handle on what schools you're applying to, what is the focus of that school, and sort of see if that school is going to align with your interest. Just to know, the average number of applications to medical school per applicant is 19. Okay, there's a range, but 19 is currently the average application number for allopathic schools in the United States. Now, to sort of get an idea of what the trend is, and we put up the numbers. I think you can appreciate sort of the relative steady state of applicants. The one standout over the past 10 years or so is that 62,000 number in the 21-22 cycle, and that was the COVID number, right? So a lot of the gap year or glide year or growth year, whatever you want to call them, processes, programs were shut down, right? That's where Brain Turns became really popular because it was online and people could at least have some access to some education and connection to medical experience through the Brain Turns. But 62,000 in 21-22. And so many students entered the process just because they may have done a gap or glide year, but COVID shut down a lot of those programs. Then a little bit of an aftermath of that of 55,000, 22-23. And then sort of it's trended back down to sort of that steady state number of where we were the previous year in the current cycle that just is completing at 51,946. So just so you have an understanding, and you look at the sort of the matriculants as well. And again, it's been fairly steady across the board. Somewhere between a third and 40% are going to get in and matriculate and getting into at least one school. And you see that. All right, now I have a question for you. So looking at this grid, and we look at the applicants and the acceptance rate, and we see that in this top group here, right? So MCAT greater than 517, 95th plus percentile, GPA also top tier, right? Greater than a 3.8, and only 83% get in. So why, I want to ask you guys a question. Why do you think that happens? Who can answer that for me? Who's willing to unmute themselves? Or Zoe, I don't have my chat open, so if somebody types in the chat, maybe you'll read an answer for me. Why
Yes,
do we think that is? Let's see. Lack of clinical experience, somebody put out, extracurriculars, not a well-rounded applicant, all possible. Okay, all possible. What does medical school have in their application process that business school does not, law school does not? Other professionals, interviews, very good, Velen Nambi. Good answer. Okay, so the interview process, right, is key. And the point being that it is important to prepare for your interviews, right? Because you look at that top group with the big numbers, right? All of these other things are true. Jeff Bowen, not well-rounded applicant, true. Less hands-on experience from Fiona Kavanaugh. Oh, you guys can see, I can't see the chat. Okay, I'm just reading some of the answers, and that's fine. But the point being, the interview process is key. And then there are some other things. Institutional actions. Are there professionalism violations? Did the person have some sort of issue with the law of some sort of, whether it's a DWI or something like that, some sort of a legal issue that may be keeping them out. So these are all important things to consider, but probably first and foremost is the interview, right? Because you can see 16% of that top group of people don't get it. All right. So understand it's not all about the numbers, and that's important here. Go forward. All right. And then just to keep you abreast of sort of what the numbers look like in terms of the applicants to medical school, and these are the applicants and the matriculants in terms of the GPAs, in terms of the MCATs, what those numbers look like for medical students. And again, just to give you an idea of the competitiveness of the process. Here in terms of the matriculants and what those numbers look like. So the prior slide was the applicants. These are the matriculants. And you can see again where and what that total MCAT number is of about 512 in terms of what we're looking at for actual matriculants to medical school. All right, so question, how many allopathic medical schools are there in the United States today? Who knows? I'm looking in the chat. Did anybody put an answer in? No. A guess.
160, 100, 170.
Okay, so 160 is correct.
Oh.
Okay. And we'll give a shout out to that person. There are 152 that have full accreditation from the LCME, and there are 8 additional schools that are in the process of evolving toward full accreditation. So accreditation has 3 stages: preliminary, provisional, and full. And 152 have full, and we were the 133rd medical school in the country. We are currently working on our 16th cycle, so we're not a new school anymore. We're a younger school, but we've had 10 years of graduates already. And we've been sort of carrying the banner for that new wave of schools that started to meet the physician shortage that is anticipated to occur in this country because of the aging population. People are living much longer, and obviously the growing population as well. How many osteopathic medical schools? So remember, there are allopathic and osteopathic. How many osteopathic? We got some answers, Zoe. You reading for me?
Yes, I'll read them to you. No, 50 is a guess.
Not bad. Okay, we have 43 of those. Okay, and just understand that osteopathic or DO programs are, very much part of the global medical community, and specifically in the United States. There are students who are DO graduates who can go into MD residencies. They are able to apply. They have to it depends, but they take the MBME exams and are able to actually enter into MD or allopathic residency matches. So for those who consider going to allopathic programs, osteopathic slightly less competitive. A plan B for those of you who may not get into an MD program, who are candidates potentially for osteopathic programs, and being able to either go to an osteopathic or an MD residency, both. And some useful websites here, and I think you'll have this recorded, but there are some very valuable information on a bunch of these. The last is a series of podcasts that are put out by the group from Case Western, where they interview many different medical school admissions officers, as well as deal with several current topics. So if you're a podcaster and you like to listen, I encourage you. I did one for them a couple of years back, but there are many good ones out there from many of the different medical schools around the country. All right, so some requirements to apply to medical school, one of which is a situational judgment test. There are two, one of which is Casper. We actually require Casper in our school. And you can see it's sort of a scenario-based test, which is a free response type of answer. So there are typed answers, there are video answers as well, verbal answers, and they're open-ended. So this is not a multiple guess test, but it is a specifically an open-ended type of process. The test itself takes about an hour and a half. There's somewhere between, I think, around 40 schools in the country that require Casper. So it's important to familiarize yourself with this, and especially if you're applying to school in New York State. A couple of us require it, so chances are you're going to need to take Casper. You can see what some of the requirements are. And it depending on the different school, how they use Casper in their admissions process. And you can see that there is a fee for that, but it is free to students who are part of the fee assistant program from the AAMC. Now, the other situational judgment test is one that's sponsored by the AAMC, and that is the preview exam. Preview is, you can see, 75-minute exam. That is a multiple guess test. All right, so different schools use different ones of these. Some don't use these at all. But again, important to familiarize yourself with them and see what specific one the school you're interested in requires, if it requires one at all. We're all sort of navigating these a little bit. There's been some popularity, some that have fallen out of favor a little bit, but we're all trying to figure out if there are ways to assess the non-academic skills, sort of the professionalism skills of our applicants prior to entering into medical school. All right, and again, participating medical schools, right now what's going on, some are recommending, some are requiring, some are exploring. So you see, we're all, as I mentioned, trying to figure out if this is a way of assessing, if the Casper is a better way of assessing, if neither are ways of assessing. So you're all going to be part of our data as we figure this all out, or try to figure it out, so to speak. Again, the useful links here between the preview exam as well as Acuity Insights for the Casper exam. All right, so the application itself, all right? Important parts of your application, again, academic achievement, research, medically related experience, community service, and of course, most important, passion. And I can't put that forward enough, how important trying to communicate your passion for medicine as well as for any one of these four things that you have specific expertise in, so to speak. It's not a checkbox situation. You know, if you're not a researcher, I wouldn't run to the lab just to wash some test tubes. You know, that's not gonna, people are gonna recognize that you're just there to check a box. I think, you know, if you are compassionate about community service and logging in multiple hours, I think that's relevant. If you are very involved as, you know, in emergency services and that's your strong suit, you know, put that front and center. It's really more trying to get your passion for medicine and where that passion is coming from. That should come out in the application. So your personal statement, obviously, remember that the people like me on our side, at our school, we get over 5,000 applications a year. That's a lot. We have to go through them quickly to get you interviewed. So you want people to read your essay. So that first sentence is important, right? Whatever that is. So you hear about the hook, and that probably was the case when you applied to college as well. You need to have a hook, so the person's going to want to read your essay, right? You can hear some types of leading sentences that we have here, a quote, a, you know, something standard, creative, all those things helpful, right? The one thing I would say about these things, so stay away from cliches. You know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. If life gives you lemons, make lemonade. Those kind of things, stay away from that, okay? Cliches are not important and are sort of off-putting in this type of process. But other things, you know, a quote that is one of a person of substance that may resonate and may sort of be a reflection of your life story, that's perfectly okay. A little bit of developing your personal statement. And here, again, you know, don't try to overdo it. You see some helpful hints here. I always talk about staying away from I-itis. I did this, I am that, no good, okay? Medicine, we're all about the we, right? Medicine is a team game, so you want to stay away from just putting yourself forward. I think talking more from a more or I should say, a less individual standpoint and more of a community, an approach such as that is better. Remember what I said about the cliches and the redundancy as well. So the 5 personal statement fatal flaws, right? So you see on the left, and then how to avoid these flaws on the right. most important thing I can tell you is that bottom bullet point, clear and sincere. All right, that's what we're looking for. We want you to be clear and sincere. The other recommendation I have, and there is a lot of value in an application in resilience, and people want to see that you are resilient, all right, because medicine in and of itself is going to pose many challenges, both emotional and sometimes physical, in terms of your fatigue, in terms of your commitments, in terms of sacrifice. So it's important to demonstrate that you have a component of resilience. However, healed scars, not open wounds. Okay. If you have or are going through something and you have not achieved resolution, I would not go there. All right. Because we want to know that you are ready to exactly embark on a journey that has significant challenges. So clear and sincere, healed scars, not open wounds. If I could recommend you take away those two sort of um, statements or lessons from this talk, those are the two from this part of the talk. Okay. The secondaries, right? And that's where, you let a school know particularly why you are interested in that school at that time. I would strongly recommend that it is a complement, and you see that in the last bullet point. Use additional information. Don't repeat what you have in your personal statement, but rather use that portion of the application to highlight other aspects of you that may not be present in the experiences or in your personal statement. You want to use this supplement if a school is asking you for specific questions, to give them additional information or elaborate on other aspects of your application. Interview. All right, so types of interviews, and here we go with that. So we, Zucker School of Medicine, use the MMI, right? And the MMI is a scenario based at our school. We have 8 stations, 7 of which are scenario based, and one of which is what we call an open room. Many schools, if they do an MMI, will also have some sort of open interview where the school is able to ask specific things about your application. The MMI in general, in most schools, including ours, the only thing that the interviewer knows is your name and your AMCAS ID number. They know nothing about what school you went to. They know nothing about your background. They don't know anything about you other than, again, your name. So, and that in an effort to remove all the potential biases that come along with that. So you can imagine, with only your name and your ID number, all those other things, that where you're from, what what academic background you're from, where you live geographically, all removed from the process. There's also behavioral interviewing that goes on, that basically takes some of the components of the MMI, but often those are open file, which means the interviewer will have access to your application, but they may ask you a behavioral type of question. Your most the greatest challenge you faced when you were captain of the lacrosse team, or the greatest challenge you faced when you were working in the soup kitchen in Harlem. So, that's sort of a behavioral type of question embedded in your application. Some schools, again, panel, little less common, meaning several interviewers on one applicant. that's relatively uncommon. And then also the group type of interviews, schools tend to navigate away from that only because, the jockeying for position amongst the applicants, and that's not necessarily what schools are after when they are interviewing you. They want to really get a sense of who you are, not a sense of how you're going to be able to take over a conversation when there are 3 or 4 other students there in the room. Just a couple of helpful tips. Most schools now are using virtual interviewing. We've all figured out that it saves the applicants time and money, and it also saves the interviewers time and money in terms of time away from practice, in terms of being able to log on from various locations. Those of you who have any knowledge of our health system know we have 23 hospitals, 4,000 faculty members. So our ability to utilize our faculty members at our various locations does us a great service because we're able to get input from a lot of different faculty without having to bring them into the school to do it in person. So we benefit tremendously from it, but you have to be aware of certain things. Obviously, the technology, important. So make sure you're with reliable internet access, probably the most important of all. You can see all the other types of helpful hints with the technology, the environment, right? You want to be in a space that's well lit, that's not distracted, and be careful what's behind you. And that's important too. If you're in your dorm room, make sure your bed is made. Just little things that you wouldn't necessarily think about. What's hanging on the wall behind you? Is that something that you want the interviewer to see? These are all things that, have impact, right? When people are interviewing you and trying to get an essence of who you are. Dress as if you would for an in-person interview, and that's important. And of course, make sure you know what is in your application, because if you are in an open interview, anything in that is fair game. So just make sure. I had an example of a student who said they spoke, I think, what did they say? They spoke a specific language, and the interviewer knew that language and started speaking to them in that language. And they said that they had a fairly significant level of competence in the language. And it was very clear when the interviewer wrote up the interview that the applicant did not have a mastery of that language, despite presenting themselves that way. So be careful and make sure that what you put in your application is something that is true, sincere, right? And something that if you're asked about, and even it may even be that language, you're able to talk and speak, etc. All right, so we talked a little bit about the virtual interview and the pros, and I mentioned some of them here. And again, there are a ton of pros with regard to that on both ends, both from the interviewee and the interviewer side. However, there are some cons. And different schools come about it differently. We in our school send out a bunch of videos in advance to give you information about the curriculum, information about student affairs, information about financial aid, so that we don't bombard you on interview day and you're not sitting in front of your computer for hours on end. We use the time to interview you, to give you a little bit of interaction with our students, to do a little bit of skills, but we try to minimize the amount of time in front of that computer, but at the same time really get a sense for you. What we do to allow our applicants that are accepted is we do offer in-person visits. So once you're accepted, you're able to come we do a virtual accepted events as well as physical accepted events, so to speak, bringing you into the school and enabling you to visit us. And that way we try to give a sense to the school for those students of ours who are accepted. And I think many other schools have done the same, those specifically who are engaged in a virtual interview process. I get often asked questions about thank you notes. You should send them relatively quickly. Um, Unless a school instructs you otherwise, I would send them. It's just a professional thing to do, no matter what professional environment you're in, whether you're interviewing for a research job. I hound my kids, and I only have one who is in medicine, but I always hound them. Send a thank you. Make sure you send a thank you. You just want somebody to know that you appreciated their meeting with you. Something referring to your conversation is always good because it sort of shows that you paid attention to what was going on, and obviously something to potentially sort of tie it all up, etc. If you're in an MMI, often it's only if you have an open interviewer, you can send it to the open interviewer. You don't necessarily have to send to the scenario interviewers. I don't think that's necessary, but it's sort of an individual choice. Those interactions tend to be very focused on the scenario, and you may not need necessarily to go through and send to 8 different people about all the different scenarios in which you engaged. With regard to letters of intent, it's important to know that they really sort of come to life at the back end of the process. It's unusual for them to have teeth front-ended. So when I say back end, April 30th, many of you may know the traffic recommendations from AMCAS and the AAMC. April 30th, one spot, one school, right? So before April 15th, you can hold as many schools as you get accepted to. April 15th, you have to trim it down to 3 schools. April 30th, you have to trim it down to 1 school, which is the plan to enroll school, right? But you can still stay on wait lists, right? So that's where it's important. If you're holding a spot at 1 school, but you will definitely go to another school that you're on the wait list for, if you are accepted, you should let that school know that. Now, only we know each other, our schools, so you do that to 1 school, and that's important. All right, don't do it to multiple schools, but 1 school, it's fine. If you're holding an acceptance at another school, I would put that in your letter of intent if schools will accept it. There are schools who won't. We do accept, all your communications. I'm a big believer in the fact that you put a lot into getting to this point. So whatever you want to send us, as long as it's relevant and it's an update or it's a letter of intent, can't be a rehashing of what's in your application already. But if there's new information, if there's something that's important that you've done, published a paper, gone on, accomplished something on your global health initiative, whatever that might be, fine. And we will certainly take that and we'll be interested in what you have to say. But again, letters of intent tend to be important back end. Front end, they're really not going to do much good for you. So just, think about that if you're considering sending one moving forward. Okay, a bunch of useful resources here. Look at that. There are tons. Okay. Again, this will be recorded. You can make reference to those. And I'm hoping that you get as much information as possible. The more informed you are, the more you know about this process, the better off you're going to be. All right. And again, I think that's very, very important in this process. Be an educated applicant because you will be more successful if that is the case. All right. For those of you who may be in high school, there are pathways to get to medical school, including a BSBAMD program. We have one. Drexel has one. There are a bunch of them, Northwestern, there are a bunch of them around the country. So again, if you are considering doing that coming out of high school, they are highly competitive programs, but it's important, again, to be sure that this is what you want to do, that medicine is really your goal. And then if you potentially want to go to a 4-4 is what we call a 4-4 program, get the information. What does that school offer you? Do you have to go? Do you have to take an MCAT? If you take an MCAT, what do you need to score, et cetera, et cetera. And there are several of these around the country. And again, educate yourself what program may sync well with you. And obviously, you remove the competitive aspect of the med school application process, which you see over the past 10 years, about a third to 40% get into at least one school. So, and again, that is competitive, as you can imagine. All right, we and other schools as well have a pipeline program. This program is specifically geared toward students who are from economically disadvantaged backgrounds, where we offer science enrichment, where we offer MCAT prep, and ultimately where we offer summer research on the back end. You can see, and this is on our website as well. So for those of you who may be interested going forward in doing a program like this, and there is a possibility of a guaranteed acceptance to medical school for a few of the high achieving students who we identify through this program. So again, some other schools have college pipeline opportunities. Again, something that if this is really your focus and you want to take advantage of that, if you have a specific school that you want to target, including ours, this is a way of going about doing it. And again, specifically, these are for economically disadvantaged students. Okay, post-bac programs, I get a lot of questions about that. There are two types of post-bacs programs. There are the career changer programs. These are competitive. These particular programs that I have up here are competitive programs, and these are just several examples of the competitive post-bac programs where you actually have to apply, you get interviewed, and they don't accept all of the comers into those programs. And then there are what we call academic enhancing programs, and those students who may not have done as well in undergraduate and need a little bit of an academic boost in order to get to medical school. And some of them are listed here. I highly recommend going to the Princeton website. They have an extensive list of all the different types of post-bac programs that are available for pre-medical students. And you should be able to get into that no matter whether you're connected to Princeton University or not. But they have a very good comprehensive list of the different types of post-bacs and which group they fall in. And then for further information, do they have linkages? Some of these post-bac programs, including our relationship with certain of them, have an ability to link to a medical school. So if you go to a post-bac, you don't have to necessarily take a year after completing the post-bac program to actually apply to medical school, but you can get a direct pathway into the medical school from the various post-bac programs as well. A school like Temple has a post-bac, but also has a direct into their own school. We don't have a post-bac program. Well, I shouldn't say that. Hofstra University does, but we are not linked to the Hofstra University post-bac program. Okay, because that is not a competitive post-bac program. We are linked to the career-changing competitive post-bac program. So again, it sort of depends on what the relationship of the medical school is to the specific post-bac program. And so again, this is our relationships with these programs, and in our situation with these schools, and again, this is our school specifically, we, if you link to us, so in other words, you're going to apply while you're in the post-bac and come to our school right after you complete the post-bac, you may have an opportunity for your MCAT to be waived. We do require some of the other elements of our application process, but again, there are some advantages to linking if you are engaged in a post-bac program. And the ones that I list above, the Bryn Mawr, Scripps, Goucher, Hopkins, Columbia, they have relationships with several medical schools, some more than others. But so if you are considering doing a post-bac, I would look at post-bac programs that do have potential connections to medical schools, because you want to leverage that post-bac in addition to the education that you're receiving, with an opportunity potentially to improve the likelihood of your matriculation to medical school. And if time is an issue for you and wanting to start sooner rather than later, you may want to be in a program that links so you don't have to take an additional year after the post-bac to apply to medical school. All right, so this is where we stand. This is our current MS2 school. I'm sorry, our current MS2 students. Our admitting class is up in here. We're 518,392 for our median MCAT, just to show you that New York is a competitive place. There are a bunch of medical schools here. We were up, we don't target necessarily GPA MCAT, so there is going to be some variability up and down. Many of you may be aware that we are in the top tier of medical schools. I think there are 90 plus that participate in the US, or I shouldn't say, I think it's over 100 actually, that participate in the US News and World Report, and we rank in the top 16 schools in the United States. So obviously a very competitive place, and that's important for you to know just in general about, again, what is going on in the medical school community and how important it is for you to be a prepared applicant. And with that, I am done. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to offer, please, if any of you want to ask any questions, more than happy to answer.
I can read them for you.
Okay, well, I can open the chat too. Let me see
Okay.
here. It just is a little distracting. So let's see. So I'm okay. Okay. Okay, so some questions here about, I'm just going to put it out. I think what you have to remember is that metrics are, we all engage in holistic review. So we're going to look at you. We're going to look at where you're coming from. We're going to look at what's going on. But understand that in a big applicant pool, for every person that has really good activities, really good extracurriculars, but not such great metrics, there are people that have those same experiences, etc., that have good metrics, right? So, and the thing about the metrics, why is it important? It's important because we need you to pass your boards, right? We want to know that you're going to get through medical school, which is challenging, that you're going to pass your boards, that you're going to pass your specialty boards. These are all sort of predictors moving forward. So again, if you don't have the best GPA coming from college, there are medical master's programs that I did not mention on the slide. Medical master's programs are programs that allow you to take courses with the medical students in the school. Tufts has one. Rutgers has one. So there are medical master's programs that allow you to sort of show the medical school that you can take courses with the medical students in the medical school and perform very well. So a recommendation for somebody who may not have the best GPA, all right, who MCAT is okay, because a lot of those programs, the medical masters, are going to require you to take an MCAT before you go to the medical master's program, all right? That may be a way of sort of doing a little bit of enhancement, right? And being involved in a medical master's program. Okay, so that would be a recommend for somebody who doesn't necessarily have the best GPA. Again, if you don't have the best GPA to retake courses again. I'm not a big fan of that. All right. Again, it depends. All right. But I think your grades are your grades. You have to sort of show the medical schools that you can perform in medical school, right? If you got a C in Orgo and you retake, one C's not killing you. Trust me. I can't tell you that. One of my colleagues in neurosurgery who went to a competitive undergrad school, and when he was participating in the admissions process, and he said, he waved the banner of the C in organic chemistry. And he's now a neurosurgeon. So please understand that like one C is not taking you out of a process, but if you have that and then you retake Orgo and you don't get an A, right, that almost works against you, right? Because people are like, this is a second time through and you're not getting an A, forget about that. So if you're going to take courses, complement it with higher level science courses, that's important, okay? But in terms of a master's program, and there are people who do master's programs, they tend not to be competitive. So posting good grades from master's programs in nutrition, or if you're doing it out of interest, all good, but it's more expedient to go to a medical master's program, right? Where you're actually taking the med school courses with the medical students and showing a school that you can do that. That is a stronger recommendation there. All right. And again, if you don't have the best GPA, try and get a good number on that MCAT to balance that out, okay? Because schools are competitive. I went to a highly competitive undergraduate institution, highly curved to a B minus C plus, and in the science courses, and many schools they curve to that B minus C plus, right? And your GPA is gonna, you're in a very competitive school that's curving at that level. Oh boy, right? So, but you can post, you can post if you got that B minus and you can post a strong MCAT, medical schools know that, right? We know the schools. We know, what environments are more competitive than others. All right. Advice for high schoolers. BS, BA, MD students. So my recommendation there is just make sure this is really what you want to do. I mean, I think high school for many is you're focused, but then you get to college, and college is a real growth experience. And I know many people who went to college pre-med and who ended up dropping off. So, my recommendation is to make sure this is really what you want beforehand, or, consider going to college and, getting that that experience to make sure, in fact, this is really what you want to do. With regard to applying to a BSBA, just make sure you let the admissions committee know that you know what medicine is about, right? Like I know there are some kids that we see who are good in math and science, they're good all around students, and they apply to the BSBA MD program with no exposure to medicine, right? And that tends not to do so well because we don't know that you have any idea of what you're getting into. All right. And the goal is to try to see if, in fact, you're making a decision to apply to these 4 4s because you know what's ahead, right? If you just go because you're good in math and science and your parents want you to be a doctor and that's what you should be doing, we can read through that a little bit. All right. So, make sure that you have on your application something that conveys the fact that you know what medicine is all about. All right. A PhD, for someone who holds a PhD in a medical science, has a better chance of getting in. Yes and no, in the sense that, so why'd you abandon the research end, right? Or are you going to be a physician? That's the question. Like, you did a PhD. Are you going to medical school now to be a physician scientist? Are you going to medical school because you want to continue on in research, but you want the medical background? Or are you totally pivoting and you want to be, so it depends how you spin that. right? I think that's sort of important, right? If you have a PhD and you're going now to the MD side as opposed to having applied to be a combined MD PhD, you got to make sure that you convey why we're doing the MD after, right? So that's important. Such as engineering, always, right? Engineering students, do not fear. We respect you. We know what you're about. We know what an engineering background is all about. Again, where I went to college, big engineering school, and let me tell you, you have a lot of respect for the engineers with some of the courses that they're taking and all of that. So I would not fear being an engineering student and knowing that your GPA is slightly lower. I don't, schools, especially our school, actually, we like engineering students because you tend to come from environments that very much encourage collaborative learning. And we are very much a collaborative learning environment, small group learning, um, independent learning, sort of that reverse classroom, coming to school, learning facts on your own, coming together to solve problems. That's the nature of our pedagogy here at the Zucker School of Medicine. So engineering is favored, actually, or we like to see. I can't say we're favored. Don't run and be an engineering major if that ain't your thing. But we look actually favorably on students who are from an engineering background because we are well aware that they have come from a very rigorous academic environment.
So there's a few questions in the Q&A, which I don't think you can see, so I'll read them
Okay,
to you.
sure.
Someone just had a simple one. What is your class size?
So we are, well, we're target this year coming in, we're about 100. So 95, we're 95 to 100 MDs. So I say we've always been 99, but this year we're at 104, whatever, doesn't, but somewhere between 95 and 100 MDs, but the MD PhD number is fixed, and that's at 4. So there are 4 MD PhDs, 95 to 100 MDs.
Okay, perfect. Someone asked, could you please shed some light on electives programs at Zucker School of Medicine, especially for an IMG, like an international med student?
So okay, so there's a whole process to apply for doing rotations in our school. Obviously, the priority for the various rotations is our own students. Then after that, it's visiting students where we have an agreement within the LCME, the Liaison Committee Medical Education, with other schools within the United States, right? So the LCME, that's how you can do electives in other schools if you are a current medical student. So many of our students who want to, they come from California. The next largest representation in the New York schools, for the most part, is California. All right, and that's because California population is large. There isn't a lot of there aren't enough medical schools in California to support the population, and blue states like blue states. So all those red flyovers, the Californians are like, no thanks, we're going to go to New York. So understand, and we have students who go out who are from California who want to go back to California. They're going to do electives in California. You want to go to Texas, where Zoe's from, you can do an elective in Texas. So our students first, then priority to the agreement institutions, then the outside. So you would have to apply through a process through the school, which is, I think, available on the website, and you can get some information about that.
Okay, the next one is for a reapplicant, what do you look for when reviewing their application?
So obviously, the most important thing is, why didn't you get it? Try to figure that out. Sometimes it's obvious. We're posting a median MCAT of 518. Your MCAT is a 509, right? Your chances are going to be the metric, right? It could be the metric, right? If you have strong metrics and you didn't get in, but you're applying straight out of college, let's say, and you don't have necessarily the wealth of experiences or you're a really strong researcher, but the schools, that you're interested in going to really want you to have some concept of the social determinants of health, right? So the important thing is try to figure out why you didn't get in. Did you not do well on your interviews? Is it an interview issue? Uh, there are either pre-med advisors, pre-med programs that will offer you mock interviews, right? So, try to figure out why you didn't get in is probably the most important thing, first and foremost. We actually will counsel some students, if you, after you have gotten rejected across the board and you reach out to our office, we do offer to talk to students, right? And, potentially give them ideas of potentially why they didn't get in. All right. Just understand, there's no harm in being a reapplicant, right? And, it only in many ways shows how determined you are to do that and how resilient you are and how passionate you are about medicine. So, I would not be discouraged if you didn't get in the first round. I told you what the numbers are. It's competitive. If you don't get in the second time, then I think you have to, and even when you apply the second time, have your plan B. Are you going to DO? Right? Are you going to, and I'm talking allopathic, obviously we're allopathic MD. Are you going to a DO program? There are good foreign MD programs, right? Australia, Ireland, Israel. There are some, and you don't have to speak, necessarily Hebrew to go to Israel, to go to the MD programs. Obviously, the war and stuff going on there, a little bit different right now, but, there are some strong foreign MD programs to consider. Okay. And the last choice is always the Caribbean programs, the for-profit. We tend to not, those applicants, Ross, I think, has 900 students or some crazy number. Those are money making largely. But again, so first choice, allopathic, although DO, and if that's your philosophy and you align with the DO philosophy, all good. So MD, DO, good foreign, right? Good foreign, and then last choice, Caribbean. So reapplicants, second time in, I would think about the alternate plans. And if you don't get in the second time, very seriously consider, those other options.
The next one is, do medical schools look down on applicants if they took the MCAT more than once or applying more than once? You kind of already answered the second portion.
Yeah, but no, we take your highest score, but one sitting. So we don't super score like the SATs. We don't super score. So if you did really well on your critical reading on the first time, but didn't do so well on the sciences, and the second time you do really well on the sciences and the critical reading drops, we take one sitting. So your best sitting, that's us. Taking it twice, no issue. Okay, we don't have an issue with it. All right. Once you get out past twice, three, then people are like, if you're taking it past twice, I'd say it gets a little bit working to your disadvantage, right? But taking it again, most students go up the second time, really, truly, and I see thousands of applications every year. It's very rare that I see some stay the same, okay, but largely people go up that second time, and I would not be afraid to take it again. All right, not at all. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Anything else, Zoe?
There's a few more questions, but we're about at time. So if you
Right.
wanted to just instead give like an overarching final words advice.
Fair enough. No problem. So, I hope you found this helpful. That's the most important thing. B, I think I mentioned to you how important it is to be an educated applicant. All right. So know the process, know everything about the schools you're applying to, understand the situational judgment test, There are those websites, they have examples how to go about them, how to take them, be prepared, okay? Because understand when you're in such a big pool of applicants in a highly competitive process, preparation is probably the most important thing to be successful. Okay, everybody's smart, right? Everybody's smart, right? You're smart. Everybody's smart. You have to be smart and prepared. All right. Clear and sincere, right? Important. Clear and sincere, healed scars, not open wounds. All right. And smart and prepared. Those are the sort of the three